What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Fish at the Moment. Today I'm out here on Beaver Lake in Arkansas. It's the middle of May and the lake is 7 feet high, but the fish are starting to pull offshore. And I actually found a really nice group of fish on a shallow point that drops into the channel this morning. And the fishing's gotten pretty tough this afternoon. And I want to show you a technique that I have been using to catch a lot of fish out of schools. And it's been working for me all winter throughout this early summer period. And it's kind of a technique that I picked up from watching guys use forward-facing sonar, but I'm catching them without forward-facing sonar. So I'll kind of explain what's going on, and I want to graph this school of fish to show you what they look like as well. We have this nice bait ball right here. I also need to make sure they're still here because they could have completely moved. But let's graph over the top of this really quick. And this group of fish is on this really flat point up here that's in about 10 foot of water. And as we graph over here, these fish were kind of setting up right in this general zone this morning. Hopefully they're still kind of sitting up here. See if we can actually graph a few of them up. Yeah, here they are. So you can see them right here. Not a ton of fish, but there's definitely still some fish in this area. And if we take a look at this split screen view, you can see all these fish right here. They're kind of mixing with some of this brush and stuff, but these fish are sitting right here, and there's a pile of them. And I caught probably 15 out of this school this morning. So there's definitely a lot of fish setting up here. The issue is the wind is shifted and it's just gotten really tough on me. So what I want to do is reposition on these fish and show you this really unique technique. It's maybe not the craziest technique in the world, but again, it's a technique that you can use to go right behind a bunch of other anglers and catch a bunch of fish when the fish are schooled up. Here he is. Nice. On our secret little technique here. Decent fish too. Not a big one, but the fish on this spot aren't super big, but just a really nice spotted bass on that deal, guys. That's what we're talking about. This is the technique, guys, and these fish are super, super pressured. Again, I caught a bunch of them off this spot. Really nice spotted bass right there on our rig. Let's talk about it here. I'll show you how I'm getting a lot of extra bites out of these schools using this bait. Okay, so let's get into this technique. First up for the bait, I'm just using a Wacky rig or Nico rigged worm. That last fish came on this Gary Yamamoto 5-inch Cinco on the core tackle, weedless Wacky shot, 1/8 ounce size. But you can also just use a Nico rig worm with anything from like a 3/32 to an 1/8 ounce nail weight in the tail. I just like the weedless Wacky shot. It comes through brush really well when I get down there around snaggy stuff. And this technique is basically developed from observing fish on forward-facing sonar, but I'm not using forward-facing sonar for this technique. This is a non-forward-facing sonar approach. And basically what I'm doing is casting that Wacky rig out and letting it sink all the way down to the bottom. And based on what I see on forward-facing sonar and what a lot of guys are doing on the professional tours is that this Wacky rig and a Nico rig will cause bass to follow that bait all the way down to the bottom. Then when that bait hits the bottom, they'll circle around that bait and eventually end up picking it up. But you may have to let it dead stick there for 15, 20, 30 seconds at times. And these fish are just sitting there staring at it. And so when you are using forward-facing sonar, you can obviously see the fish, cast at them, and that's how Easton Fothergill actually won the Bassmaster Classic at Ray Roberts this year. But you can do this without forward-facing sonar with one small twist, and that's that you need a school of fish and a waypoint to throw at. So I graphed the school of fish here, I have my waypoint marked, and I'm just throwing at my waypoint with my range rings and heading arrow like I always do. And I'm using the exact same technique that these guys are doing with forward facing, but I'm basically blind fishing. So I know the fish are down there, I know exactly where that group is, and I'm gonna work that bait and just move it a few feet, hop it up off the bottom, then dead stick it there for 15, 20, sometimes even 30 seconds. And these fish are gonna do one of two things. They're either gonna eat it off the bottom when that bait is sitting there, or they're gonna eat it as soon as you move the bait. And that's how that last fish bit it. And the idea behind this technique, again, is just that we know the behavior now is that these fish will follow that bait to the bottom and then circle it, and then eventually eat it. And when there's so many fish down there, the chances of one of them picking up is really, really high. Oh, golly, there he was. He grabbed it right when I moved it. And it's so weird because they either eat it right when you move it, there he is. They hit it right when you move it or when you dead stick it back down there on the bottom. That's the two ways that they get it. And it's so effective, and it's something that you can do and go behind guys after they've fished the spots over and over. So if you fish like on Tennessee River, Lake Chickamauga, or even like out here on Beaver when these schools get really pressured, these aren't big ones, there's not big ones really offshore out here. I'm kind of ahead of the fish a little bit right now on Beaver. It's like May 15th, so we're not like super in the middle of the summer, but the same concept applies. And basically these fish are pressured mainly by me today because I caught like 20 of them on a crankbait earlier this morning. And when these fish do get super pressured like this, and there's a lot of guys rotating the same spots, you need to have something that is a little bit different that'll get you bit. And I actually perfected this on another like power plant lake that's local here, and I had a spot that was loaded up with fish, but I couldn't get them to bite a crankbait, a flutter spoon, swim bait. I was even using forward-facing sonar trying to minnow them. Couldn't get them to bite. But for some reason, they would eat this weedless wacky shot with this technique I'm showing you here, which is basically just dead sticking that bait on the bottom and then hopping it up, dead sticking it on the bottom. And I guess it doesn't seem that crazy because you think, okay, maybe that's what you do with a jig or that's what you do with a shaky head or a drop shot. The difference though is how long I'm letting the bait sit there. You have to let it sit for a very long time. It's not a technique where you can let that bait sit for like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, then hop it. Let it fall back down, hop it. You don't give those fish enough time to actually get the bait in their mouth. So you have to let that bait just sit there and sit and sit and sit. Then after it's sat there for, again, a long time, 15, 20, 30 seconds, then you hop it off the bottom. And that's why you have to have schools of fish found for this technique. It's not a great technique when you have just a handful of fish or there's just a couple fish in an area. You want to have a group of them so that you know every single cast you're casting right in the middle of fish. And it kind of is almost, I would say, like fishing a jerk bait super slow in the wintertime, where you'll jerk that bait down and when the water temperatures are like 39 degrees, you just dead stick that bait for 15, 20 seconds in the middle of the winter. And that's what we're doing here. We're just taking advantage of these kind of lethargic fish that aren't necessarily that aggressive, and we are getting them to bite. And these, again, are just small spotted bass, but I've caught some really big ones in some bigger schools this year doing this technique. Oh, what in the world? I thought the fish had it. Someone thumped it right there. Next cast. Let me throw back out there. I mean, these fish will just eat this thing. And it's great because you don't need forward-facing sonar for it. You don't need really anything. And the other thing I like about this is I feel like it's one of the few ways you can get those suspended fish to actually bite. So what's happening is that this bait is falling past those suspended fish and they're following it down to the bottom. So even though it's a bottom presentation, you're drawing those suspenders down from the middle of the water column down to that bait. And I'm probably playing some different recordings showing it on forward facing to give you the idea of what's happening with this bait and why it's working, why this technique is interesting. And it's a cool way to take what we're learning from forward-facing sonar and then transferring it over to traditional fishing methods, again, without the forward-facing. And it is just a little something that I feel like I can have in the back pocket that allows me to catch a few extra fish off these spots. If this was a spot that had 3 and 4 pounders on it, I'd have an extra couple 3 or 4 pounders. And when these fish get really conditioned to different baits and fishing pressure and stuff throughout the year, this technique can be really, really good. You may not catch a pile of fish off of it because it is a kind of a slow technique, so you might not want to throw this when they're biting a crankbait, for example, but it is a really good cleanup bait.
Really quick, guys, I want to let you know about a new seminar I'm offering on fishthemoment.com. This new age ledge fishing seminar focuses on techniques that have been developed over the past few years using forward-facing sonar to target offshore bass on ledges. I'll be talking about how to utilize these techniques both with and without forward-facing sonar to gain an advantage over other anglers on your lake. Definitely check out the seminar at fishthemoment.com.
Got him. Man, this is a slow way of fishing, guys, but it freaking works. I'm telling you. That's a decent fish too, a good largemouth actually out here. I would take one of these in a tournament out here. It's a nice fish. I was not expecting to catch one like that. That's a good keeper for beaver. Look at that. Nice. I would take literally 5 of those, or like a 4-pounder would be really good right now, middle of May on beaver, especially if you weren't using forward facing. Maybe for the forward facing guys, they'd be able to catch them better, but without forward facing, that's pretty good right there. And just working that worm. It's a pretty slow way to fish. It's not maybe the best way if you're trying to like go out and fun fish. There's probably more fun ways to catch them, but there's just something about this that gets these fish that are really pressured just to fire. Now that I think about it, there's actually some guys on the Major League Fishing Tour earlier this year that were using a very similar technique around shallow boat docks in Lake Hartwell. Basically, they would see these fish on boat docks with forward-facing sonar during practice and things like that, and then they would get to these docks and they would fish them unbelievably slow. And I talked to a few of the pros that were doing it, and they basically explained that they knew the fish were on these docks because they saw them with forward facing, which obviously you can't always do, but they were basically fishing like I'm doing here, where they would let that bait, got them. Oh man, sorry, I can't even finish my sentence because I'm catching them, but let me get this guy in and I'll finish my story. Nice fish right there. I'm telling you guys, this technique works. Nice fish. It actually has a hook mark in him. That fish had a hook mark in his mouth because he'd already been caught. And he bit this bait, even though he'd already been caught. That's pretty cool. Anyways, getting back to my story, basically these guys were skipping Wacky rigs under boat docks and then letting that bait fall all the way down the bottom. These boat docks had 10 to 20 feet of water on them, and they would just dead stick that bait down there for, again, a long time, 20, 30 seconds. I keep saying it, but it's a very long time that they're letting that bait sit down there. And then they would move it just like that, hop it off the bottom, and then dead stick it again. And they would spend 5 to 10 minutes fishing each dock, and they'd only make like 4 casts because each cast was taking them so long to get in. But they knew those fish were there, so they were able to slow down and make those presentations. So it's a really good technique, obviously, if you know those fish are in that area. But without using forward-facing sonar in practice to like identify which docks have fish on them, it's not going to be that productive a technique. You can't go down the bank over here and fish every bush like I'm fishing this right now. So that's why I'm kind of saying it works great for these offshore fish where you know they're there, you know you're casting at a school, you got your waypoint lined up and all that stuff, and you can just wait and wait and wait. And right now I've already caught 4 fish off this area doing this, and we haven't been fishing for very long. I haven't made that many casts. It's just each cast is taking forever, so it feels like I've been here for a long time. And there's probably a lot of other ways to utilize this technique that I'm not even thinking about, in the sense that there's probably other areas where you know the fish are there and you can just really slow down, whether that is a little spillway that you know has, oh, come on, he had it. A little spillway that you know has fish on it, or maybe a released area with a stretch of riprap that you know just always has fish. And maybe using this technique and slowing down really slow will allow you to put a few more fish in the boat in tournaments or just when you're fun fishing. So I'm gonna keep firing this out here. It'd be great to get one more. That fish right there just missed it. I think I've been bit every single cast with this deal though. I just haven't connected on all of them. Some of the fish are pretty small off the spot, but pretty cool deal. Really quick, guys, I want to make a few casts with this crankbait just to show you that I'm not trying to pull the wool over your eyes and make it seem like this technique is fantastic when you can just throw a crankbait down there and catch one. I'm going to wind that down there a couple times because this is the bait I was cracking them on this morning. And if you watch my previous video here, I was catching them every stinking cast on this bait. And something about just catching enough of those fish, get them really conditioned to this deal, and eventually they'll just stop biting. You can throw and throw and throw right on those fish and you just won't get a bite. So you have to mix it up. You may be able to drag a worm or something as well really slow. I mean, a Texas rig probably would have the same impact. I really like that Nico rig style bait just because I do feel like it falls through and gets those suspended fish a little bit better versus dragging a worm, because the worm only targets those bottom fish, where that Nico rig targets the fish that are suspended up and then drags them down to the bottom. So you target the suspenders and you target the fish that are on the bottom. So anyways, it's hard for some reason to talk and crank at the same time. I don't have my cranking stamina up or my cranking muscles up. I need to throw crankbait more this summer to build that back up. But anyways, you can see 3 casts right through that deal. I'll show you on the mapping too. I mean, I'm kind of off with the mapping just because I'm spot locked, but that lineup on that school, it's literally right there. That's that school. Actually kind of drifted off without actually getting more bites a little bit further this way from that waypoint. But I'm firing straight ahead of the boat, right where that deal is. And I'm just not getting bit on the crankbait, but they will bite that Wacky rig. Again, Nico rig will work as well, but just kind of wanted to show that to you guys so you can see the power of that Nico rig. Got him. There we go. Nice fish here. That's actually another decent one here. Good largemouth. Oh my gosh. Or good spotted bass. Oh, he threw me off. Dang it. That was a good one. That was like a 2¼ pound spotted bass. Dang, I don't know why he threw that. But anyways, it's on almost every single cast, guys. I'm getting a fish. And that weedless Wacky shot, I do think there's something special about this weedless Wacky shot, guys. It just gets so many bites, and it's just a little bit different from a Nico rig. A lot of guys are putting the weight in the tail of the bait. By putting that weight in the center of the bait, it does give a little bit of a different vibration to the Senko, and I feel like just having something that's a little bit different or unique, especially that comes through cover as well as this is. You can throw this in the middle of a brush pile. It's a great little rig. If you haven't picked any up, definitely try some out. I'll leave a link down in the description to them. And I just always put a Yamamoto Senko on the back. Bummed that I lost that last little fish, but it was a really good deal here. Pulled up to another school, or to the same school I was catching them on, and had 5 really nice bites in quick succession. So that's pretty cool. And for my gear with this Wacky shot, I'm pairing it on a little bit longer rod. This is Denali Lithium Pro 7'4" medium heavy power spinning rod. It helps me cast that bait a little bit further here offshore and set the hook on those fish, and most of the time it'll drive the hook home pretty good. That hook on that weedless Wacky shot is a really good solid hook, so you want a little bit longer, stouter rod with it. I'll leave a link down in the description to this rod and a discount code to denalifishing.com where you can get 30% off these rods. It's a great deal. I'm just pairing that up with this Shimano Nexave reel. Still not a fan of this reel, but it was 50 bucks, so can't really complain. And pairing that with a some 15-pound braid line for my main line and 8-pound fluorocarbon for my leader. So pretty solid deal. Wanted to share this technique. It's something that I feel like has a lot of applications, not just offshore, but I'm sure there's a lot of other ways you guys can figure out to use this. And it's a technique that's developed kind of from understanding stuff from forward-facing sonar. So not all bad, and we're catching them here without forward-facing. So hopefully you guys like this content. If you do, make sure to leave a comment down below. And other than that, see you guys next video.